Welcome to podcast 43. Yes, 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 maybe, but yes.
Hello, welcome back to another episode of podcast 43. It is your host, Chris Borg, joined with my lovely co-host, Fulton Collins.
Hello. Thank you for that nice description.
Well, it's true.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Back at you.
But yeah, so we are so how have you been?
I've been okay. I've been busy. It feels like so long since we've recorded an episode, but I guess it really has just been a week.
No, it was this exact time yesterday when we were wasting 90 minutes. Apologies to Martin Short. But without further ado, our feature film this week is something that is most definitely not a waste of time, and that is Joe Dante's 1993 film Matinee. So I guess I'll let you take this one because you were the one that picked it. So.
Yeah. And I meant to look kind of at like a biography of Joe Dante just to see if he like grew up on a military base, because that's where like this film is mainly centered. But I think the only other Joe Dante film I've seen is Looney Tunes Back in Action, which I know
he didn't grow up on a military base. His dad was actually a professional golfer.
Oh, wow. Okay, interesting, because it seems to have like a certain like. Did he grow up in Florida then?
Nope.
Wow. Okay. Because the film almost feels like it has a certain type of fondness for kind of Key West, but also that kind of like like the military base growing up. I don't know if you call it a feeling, but just that kind of lifestyle.
I think it's more I do agree that it has, it has that fondness, but I think a lot of that sensibility also just comes from him working with Roger Corman in the beginning of his career. And so there's just a lot of, just that love of like B horror, but like it very much does seem also like autobiographical.
That was my take, but I didn't really read too much into it or kind of him beforehand. I had planned on doing it afterward, but I got sidetracked. But I know me and you kind of have our differences on Looney Tunes Back in Action, but I do really enjoy that. And for some reason, that one really spurred me. And just hearing about, his other works really inspired me to kind of like look more into his filmography. He just has he has an interesting kind of filmography. I've listened to Movies That Made Us, or movies. Yeah. I think Movies That Made Us, which is a pretty good podcast that he hosts as well. But I always forget the other dude's name. But yeah, so I figured this would be kind of an interesting place to kind of continue with his filmography. And I think the podcast is a good excuse, to just kind of pop in, movies that interest us and stuff like that. So that's kind of like why I chose it.
Yeah. I've been wanting to see this one for a while. I like Joe Dante, especially Gremlins 1 and 2, I think are both equally great. I think that Gremlins 2 definitely has been reclaimed as of late too, but just kind of a very fun 80s, just like popcorn film. And I'm unfortunately didn't enjoy Looney Tunes Back in Action too much, although
it's understandable.
Although I respect some aspects of it. But Dante has just a lot to offer, and I think a lot of the reason why I do like him is also his. I think this film is a pretty good thesis on that, because it kind of shows his appreciation for his for the people that made him the filmmaker that he is today, and kind of how he draws his inspiration from the greats. even the character, even John Goodman's character, who's this, very
It's probably my
charismatic.
favorite part of the film.
Oh, he's so great.
Yeah.
He's like this charismatic movie producer slash showman named Lawrence Woolsey, is just inspired by William Castle, the producer, who kind of made just the so many cheap B movies back in the 50s and 40s, and was able to do it in like such a workmanlike way, just like making stuff all the time.
I also thought he had a little bit of mix of Alfred Hitchcock in him too.
Well, I mean, that's why I say in the beginning at the gas station.
I love that scene
when he gives when Lawrence Woolsey Lawrence Woolsey is at the gas station, and he's filling up, and the gas attendant comes up to him and asks for his autograph, because he's like, you're that guy that makes those scary movies, like, how do you do it? And like, he's very, very proud of this guy recognizing him, and then he's like, can you make it out to something, Mr. Hitchcock? And it's the punchline is that he thinks that he's Alfred Hitchcock. But anyways, I guess maybe we should probably tell people that are uninitiated what Matinee is about. So it's
yeah. Oh, my bad. I'm sorry.
No, I wasn't sure if you wanted to. I didn't want to take over, because it is technically,
I'll do a summary, and then I'll let you kind of take it there from your first impressions of it. So this film is, like we kind of mentioned before, pull my earbud up. It's set in Key West, in the 60s, around the height of the Cuban Missile Crisis, and it focuses on, I need to double check his character's name. I want to say it was Joe, but I know that's not true.
As
Gene.
Yeah, Gene.
Yeah. Focuses around Gene, and mainly he is like super into like monster B horror movies. And which the opening I love, because it's kind of like an ode to like Hitchcock, because you see John Goodman by his side, and you get that nice blacked out kind of side profile, which is very reminiscent of Hitchcock. And it plays out a lot like if you've ever seen it, but the Psycho trailer, and I'm sure other trailers of the time, where Hitchcock was kind of a celebrity director, so he was a main part of the trailer, and I just thought that was a really fun opening. But it's centered around Gene and Woolsey. Whoa, sorry, tripping over my words. Woolsey, played by John Goodman, and Gene is played by Simon Fenton. And so they kind of become interlocked, because John Goodman is premiering his new film Mant at the local cinema in Key West, and
sequel to Mank.
Yeah, the better sequel. And Gene is super enamored with Goodman's character, and asks if he can help out. And so it's just kind of like a little slice of life. Or to me, it was kind of a little slice of life of kind of their interactions in this kind of little small military city slash, just little city in Key West.
Also during,
I should say town, sorry.
Quite an eventful moment in U.S. history.
Yes, yes. Which I think the ending plays on it in a very interesting way, but I guess we'll get to that later.
Yeah.
So Chris, what are your kind of first impressions of Mank?
Well, I was smiling the whole time when I was watching this. It's very much hit all the right synapses in my brain of just like what I like. I think it's very celebratory about cinema as a way to connect people, even in this time of just complete distress, where you think that the world is going to just end.
Mhm.
But at the same time, it also critiques the exploitation of these people's emotions for personal gain. And
Mhm.
even though you look at John Goodman's character and you say, well, you're kind of sleazy with what you're doing and all this
Mhm.
publicity that you're trying to ramp up and kind of fan some controversy, he's just so charismatic that you just really end up liking his character.
Mhm. Well, he does, stick his neck out at the
He
same
does. No, I
time,
mean, he helps get yeah, he helps out when some characters get trapped in a fallout shelter.
Mhm.
Which is another great line. I mean, it's just also very, very funny, quotable film. I mean, I do this a lot when I watch movies for the podcast, and I just kind of, write down quotes that are memorable to me. Like when they're talking about when Gene and his little brother are watching the UN meeting, and one of the characters or one of the guys at the UN says like something about how like come hell or high water, like we're not gonna like back down from the Russians. And then his little brother goes, he said hell. And and then as Gene goes, it's all right, it's a crisis. And I thought that was really funny. And it's like a lot of that humor is like kind of very innocent and kind of taps into like that feeling of like kind of childhood innocence that I really liked. Like the whole, oh, come on, mom, come on, we gotta put away this Lenny Bruce record. My mom's coming home. Like she can't hear me saying this. Or yeah, I think it's like the Purple Rose of Cairo, but for B horror, where it's like, I don't know, it's kind of a beautiful ode to cinema in the same way that Woody Allen does. How Woody Allen looks at kind of escapism through the eyes of an adult using the cinema. This is very much escapism through the eyes of a child.
Mhm. In the theater, there are a ton of posters. I was wondering if you, I was adding a ton of them to my watch list on Letterboxd because I really would like to see more like monster B horror movies.
Well, I mean, there wasn't even just B horror stuff. There was
Mhm.
Howard Hawks's Hatari was featured
Mhm.
prominently. And of course, we have to mention The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, which
Well,
is
that was my segue. I was
yeah.
getting to that. I was going to ask if you had saw that, but
Oh
I
yeah.
knew you have a keen eye, so I'm not surprised.
I had to write it down. I had to say Man Who Shot Liberty Valance poster, and then in all caps, based.
Yeah. 2 bonus points for that one. I guess should we talk about I wanted to ask you, there were only like 2 I only have one kind of little thing that I wish they kind of that I wish they would have cleared up. I would have liked to know like their age, the kids' age.
I think
'Cause
they were
like
like sophomores in high school. I wasn't sure, but I did also want to I also did want to give Joe Dante a pat on the back for like casting actual high schoolers.
Yeah.
Like to play high schoolers in his movie.
Yeah. If anything, they look younger than actually looking too old, which I think
Yeah.
is, better than them looking like 25-year-olds playing, you know. No,
Yeah.
I just because like the only reason I want to know is because I couldn't tell if they were in middle school or if they were in high school. And then so if you look at it through the lens of them possibly being in middle school, there's like 2 weird lines to me. Other than that, I'm pretty fine with it.
Oh
But
yeah. I
like,
mean, there were a few that I was like, yeah.
yeah, because
But yeah.
yeah.
I know what you're talking about.
I just to point out one because I just find it just so odd to me. But is in spoiler alert, I guess. There's a scene at the end where Gene and his and the girl that he really likes get trapped in a vault in a fallout shelter, And then the girl looks at him and is like, Gene, I think we're going to have to become like the new Adam and Eve. And I was like,
yeah, well, because they get trapped in the fallout shelter and they think that the
yeah,
world is going to
is
end.
ending. Yeah. That made me, I was like, ooh. That was really that, and the part where I'm forgetting her name, but Jean has a best friend. Sherry or no, I think it's Sherry. Sherry is no, it's not Dennis. No, sorry, I'm gonna find his name. I can't remember. But anyways, but Gene has a friend, and he's also going after a woman that he really likes. I believe her name is Sherry, if I can remember correctly. And there's a part where Sherry was like, well, I don't know if you knew, but I dated an older man before you, and he taught me a lot.
Yeah,
And she's like,
about my body.
a lot. Yeah. I thought it was weird, but I thought it was kind of funny at the same time. And then I guess that would be a segue into Harvey Starkweather, which is like the old greaser type dude. And I say old only by like a few years or something, I think.
Yeah, who has the hots for what's her name?
Was it Sherry?
Yeah, Sherry, who has
Yeah.
the who is also liked by Stan, who's
Stan, that's right. That's right.
Jean's friend.
Mhm.
And he's like this older guy that she was involved with that's a greaser that also writes beat poetry, which I thought was like a really great character trait, is just him reciting these poems and people just being like, I don't know what that means.
What?
He's like, I hold the knife on the road. It's like stuff like that. He's just really ahead of his time because it's only what 62 or so, so he has to wait a few years before the beat poetry really takes off as a scene in the late 60s. So
He'll be ready though.
Yeah, so and then like just this whole Lawrence Woolsey, or John Goodman's character, he like prides himself in his showmanship and how he's able to just like debut his film Mant about a man that gets turned into an ant. And he's able to debut it like in the most spectacular way possible. And I think it's also something that you should appreciate as his character, as someone that just is a bit sleazy but also kind of just really cares about what he's doing and kind of thinks that he's like, I don't know, he just puts a lot of effort into it, like making the seats so they can shock people, or the whole like
having Rumble Rama,
his patented way to shake the theater, or like shoot smoke in certain scenes. It just it made me really want to go to see this movie, because when you go to like Universal or Disney, it's always like those like lame 4D things like Shrek 4D, or I think I saw like a Bug's Life 3D 4D experience, or Muppet Vision. But I want to watch a feature film that's like also a 60s / 50s B horror movie in this way.
I think it ultimately goes back to something that, if I remember correctly, I don't remember the movie that's kind of spurred us talking about it, or maybe we didn't talk about it on the podcast, but we did talk about it when we had Joseph on. We talked about bringing back like, and I don't mean this as like a detractor, I mean it seriously as a compliment, but we need to bring back like gimmicky filmmaking. And I think that's like one of the big things about this film that I really appreciate, is because, and when I say like gimmicky filmmaking, is having it be more than just what you're seeing on the screen. It's like an actual like like we're talking about Rumble Rama, where there's, like you can feel, the
Yeah.
vibrations in your chest and you're getting shocked. And like, um, back when this movie, or in the time that the movie is depicting in the 60s, and I think John Goodman even, talks about it. He's like, well, we can have a ghost that flies over the audience. Like, directors were doing that. They were actually, they would hire nurses as like a publicity stunt to be like, if this movie scares you to death, sign this, or we're not,
Yeah.
so we're not guilty. I think it's such a like a lost thing. Like, I guess we had, the most recent one was 3D, but that kind of
Well, 3D
came
kind of
and
ebbs and
went.
flows as
Yeah.
in the history of cinema. It's like, there were plenty of 3D movies back
Mhm.
in the time that Matinee takes place in, and then it comes back and recedes, and then we had 3D TVs, 3D Blu-rays.
Yeah.
Similarly, did not really take off, but
Yeah.
they do have that 4DX thing. You know what I'm talking about? Have you heard of that?
Yeah, no, and the thing about that is I do really want to try that. I've just never been to a theater that. Well, I remember I was gonna go see like the Incredible Burt Wonderstone in New York with my
In
parents, and
4DX?
I was like, can we please go see it in 4DX? And they were like, no, it's way too expensive.
What a movie to see in 4DX.
Yeah, well, and maybe it was what was the other movie? Maybe it was a Mission Impossible that was playing in 4DX.
I want it. I'm just gonna let in my mind you said Burt Wonderstone, and that's what it's gonna stay as.
It was either like no, I agree. It should be Burt Wonderstone. But I don't even remember what the movie was, but
so yeah, like I guess maybe we can talk about the Cold War backdrop and kind of how that plays into it.
I think we kind of have to.
Yeah, I think it's kind of the elephant in the room. Yeah. Because as we've said before, this takes place during the Cuban Missile Crisis, and the main character of the film, Gene, is his dad is in the military actually, and is stationed in Cuba in the Navy, or he's in the Navy. And so like it's just kind of like just a lot of I mean, you never even see his dad in the movie. It's just a very distressed.
You see him through like home video footage, and that's it. But
but then there's also like this girl, the girl that is like the love interest, who's of him, Sandra, who's the girl from Mrs. Doubtfire, actually, which that was which came out the same year as this. They kind of hit it off, but she's like from a completely different household where she has like these like very like socially liberal, like stereotypical, like I don't know, they were giving me like professor vibes, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like they had that academic type wear, and like she only calls them by their first name. And like there's this great scene where they're like the air raid sirens go out, and they have to go do like the drill to like, you gotta like cover your head in the hallway. And like then that's how they introduce their characters. Like she's shouting at the teacher and being like, this is nothing's gonna change, like you think that this is gonna protect you from a nuclear bomb, we're all gonna die. And like she and then they're like at one of the boys goes, she's a communist or something, like
she's a commie.
That filthy commie. Yeah,
how dare she?
But
she's got a point though.
She's got a point. I mean, she has
literally
a lot
can't. Yeah.
I always thought that was kind of strange to do for a drill, is like get under your desk. Like, nah, that's not going to protect you. At least hide in a fridge like Indiana Jones and Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Yeah, but it's just kind of like how those two different. I think that's an important part of the movie, is like these two different worlds kind of converging and understanding different points of view are kind of being brought together by the cinema, and like, you know, realizing that like doesn't really matter. I mean, not saying that the annihilation of the human race is not worth crying about. And I would say that, you know,
It is.
I think that all of her characters' points are quite salient, like speaking out against segregation and nuclear war.
Yeah, I was surprised to hear her talk about that. I was because I was like, yeah, that was before I knew that, like, how intellectual her parents were. I was like, where the hell is she getting all this stuff?
Yeah.
But you know, which it's not to say that she doesn't have a point. I just like, I remember when I was like early on in high school, I don't think I was having too many thoughts about political stuff. But
yeah,
that's on me. So
yeah, so but yeah, how do you feel about the way that the way that the movie kind of ends? I don't want to like say like spoilers, but like more so like just kind of like how John Goodman's character kind of, I mean, how, you know, it's clearly there's a lot of subtext there with like what he's talking about, as far as like there will always be another what does he say? Now I can't even remember like what the quote is exactly, but it's just kind of,
I know what you're talking about. Essentially, I think he's like saying like there'll always be another boogeyman. Like humans will go down and get back up.
yeah,
You
exactly.
know, kind of just as easily. So I mean, like my understanding of horror films is like, I think more often than not they're an embodiment of like the current like whether it be subtle or not, they're normally like an embodiment of what like society is scared of at the moment. You know, like I said, that some can choose to kind of take that role and some can choose to not. But so I see kind of Mant, I see that him kind of weaponizing that fear of the Cold War, in particular with the ending, but I also find his kind of outlook on kind of like horror movies interesting too, because there's a scene where him and Gene are talking and they're like, you know, horror films can be kind of cathartic, I think, to a certain extent, because you get to feel that kind of pressure of being scared, and you're feeling alive, and then you go out of the theater and everything's perfectly fine.
Yeah,
you know, like it almost can kind of set some things into perspective. So I
Or-
find
yeah,
yeah.
And he's like, the lights come up and you know, or everything is okay in the end. The lights come up, you exit the theater, go back to reality. But yeah, it's like you go to the film, you go to the cinema to us for as a form of escapism, whether that be, hey, I want to be put in a place of just complete distress for an hour and a half, you know, with how this movie is at least being more about horror movies, and like the one movie that they do go to that isn't a horror movie, you know, they're bored. Which has an early appearance from Naomi Watts, actually, one of her first roles. I thought
it was really interesting.
Yeah, in this movie within a movie. But you know, it's like, how can you even, why would you even want to go to a horror movie as a kid, especially? I mean, I'm speaking as someone that would get scared of things easily as a kid.
Oh yeah, me too. I stayed away from them.
When the threat of nuclear annihilation at least is being told to you by, you know, the media and stuff, it's just like completely breathing down your neck. Like, the Cubans and the Soviet Union, they're stockpiling all these weapons. So, you know, why would you want to escape to the theater and feel distressed when you're already living that, you know?
I would, if I can psychoanalyze for a moment, I would think that it would be, you know, because that's such an ultimate fear, you know, of losing the entire, you know, human race. Maybe it's just it's just different in a way where it's like a different type of fear. And because I'm thinking like, what would you be scared of if you knew the world was going to end? So it'd have to be something kind of abnormal. So then you have Mant.
Mant.
You know,
Man, I also wanted to say that, like, of the, like, Mant and the two fake movies in, like, cinema history that I want to see the most are in their entirety is Mant and in Jean-Luc Godard's Contempt, there's a Fritz Lang directing his version of the Odyssey.
Yeah,
So
that would be interesting.
Joined into the fold.
Man, it looked great. I mean, all the practical effects look fantastic too.
Oh, and then just like the just super corny jokes and stuff.
Yeah. Also, dude, I would love to go to a theater like the one in Manton. You have, well, I don't know if I want to. The John Goodman dresses up the theater so like well. And he really kind of gets you in the mood to want to watch Mant. I don't want to like ruin it because I think there is like a good bit of like awe and illusion to how it's how he dresses up the theater. But I thought that was really fun.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. But yeah, I don't know. I guess I don't have anything else to say other than please check this out. I think it's just a lovely movie. Definitely well, no. I mean, I was gonna say probably like I like The Devil Probably of the things that we've talked about the last few weeks. Devil Probably still is better. Just as a film, but I think this one, it's a lot more entertaining, and I think it's just, I mean, if you're into B horror, then this shouldn't even be like a question of if you should check it out.
Yeah. I think this one might be my favorite in recent memory because I do like Johnny Got His Gun.
Well, we will be talking, but we will be talking, Fulton, about Pickpocket in a few minutes. So
this is very true. I feel like we have two very, very good movies to talk about.
Yeah.
And you'll see what the other good movie I'm referring to is soon.
Yeah.
But I guess should we take an ad break?
Yeah, let's take an ad break. All right.
30. Okay.
All right. So here we are back from our ad break that totally happened.
In sync.
Yeah. And so I guess without further ado, me and Fulton will be talking about the recent releases that both of us got around to seeing. And I guess we'll go in chronological order with when we watch them. But first of all, we'll be talking about the much anticipated 2021 Paul Schrader film, The Card Counter, starring Oscar Isaac, Willem Dafoe, Ty Sheridan, and Tiffany Haddish.
It's a crazy cast.
Yeah. Too bad I wasn't high on the movie.
Yeah. It's so unfortunate. I was very, very, very much looking forward to it. And I also thought about asking, friends and featured guests of the show, Cody Workman and Reagan Jones, were super ecstatic about this film, and they saw it a few days before us, I think.
Yeah.
So my expectations were a little bit built up. I thought about asking them if they want to send over like a few minutes of them kind of talking about it, so we could play that as counterpoint to us. But I feel like it's an idea to save for a future episode.
Yeah, well, it's also gonna probably get very heated. Judging
by
how
I didn't want to do it as like a call and response type of thing. I just kind of wanted to have like two different opinions on the movie, so people could kind of gauge.
Yeah, I mean, so the thing is I think late period Schrader's very, very hit and miss. I've talked about The Canyons on this podcast before, which is his 2013 effort, which I think is quite bad. But then you have First Reformed, which is kind of seen as a return to form for him. But similarly to the Canyons, I mean, this isn't as bad as the Canyons, but it's not good. It's very dull. And I don't think its dullness is a kind of a rewarding type of dullness. It's just, you're just kind of waiting. You get these lengthy shots like Bresson would, like in the style of Bresson, that Schrader loves so much, but you don't have a lot of substance. I think Oscar Isaac is fine. I think Tiffany Haddish is just not good. I think she's very miscast. I had such high expectations too, because I did hear somebody on Twitter say, somebody that I trust on Twitter, I forget who, but they said that like Schrader's done it again. He got a comedic actor and got a really good serious performance out of them, a la Richard Pryor and Blue Collar. But
and just to let that settle in, when Chris told me that, my jaw opened so big. The comparison would be made to Richard Pryor and Blue Collar, which is one of my one of my favorite movies in recent memory, and I think he does great. I think he does fantastic in that movie.
Yeah, but Tiffany Haddish just wants to tell jokes, but doesn't tell them. Or when she does, like, she's like doing a serious performance, but also telling jokes at the same time, as if she's doing like a comedy role. It's very strange.
Yeah, and I don't like necessarily like I didn't like get down with the movie, and I can't say that I hated any of the performances, only because I feel like there's an awkwardness between. I felt like there was an awkwardness in the direction, more or less, than like, and I get like, I just have like a feeling that it was just directed very awkwardly, and so like probably what the actors were trying to do was the best that they like could do with what they had and what they were being directed. Because I just feel like I just feel like all the performances are so awkward, and I feel like the editing is a little awkward, and like some of the shot composition is a little off, and
it's not
such a strange movie.
Yeah, I mean, kind of there's some underlying political stuff that I do appreciate, and I think is kind of interesting, and kind of the way that Schrader looks at things, especially releasing this movie on 9/11 weekend, and a major part of it being about the inhumane torture at Abu Ghraib was like, oh, okay, interesting.
That was my like, I think there's interesting stuff in the movie. I agree with you there, and I think that is the most interesting part to me.
Yeah, it's just not. I just don't think it's very focused with what it's trying to go for, and also Willem Dafoe is not in the movie nearly enough. Surprisingly, card counting actually means jack shit in the movie. And he does the ending from Pickpocket again, because he did it in a Light Sleeper as well, because he loves.
But this riff on it is so funny.
Yeah, the riff on this is really funny, because it's like it doesn't make any sense. Like it's a very I don't know. It's like in Pickpocket, like it feels earned.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm not, these movies are not even like Pickpocket and this are not on the same level. But yeah, I just don't. I just wasn't crazy about it. The one part that we were laughing so hard in the theater with some of the dialogue, though, like the shit where like one of the characters is like, yo, you ever heard of Google Earth?
You can see the front and back of their house. But I mean, my personal favorite is it's a slight, it's not really, well,
what damn bitch you live like this.
The damn bitch you live like this. But also there's a scene where Oscar Isaac is like, dude, he looks at Ty Sheridan and is like, when you talk to your mom, I'll fuck a girl then. And it was just like,
yeah, that was a good one too. But we fortunately had the whole theater to ourselves, so we're hooting and hollering with all the Skrulls folk. But I don't know. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I would say proceed with caution on this one.
Watch Blue Collar. I'm gonna get around to more Schrader. I just haven't yet.
Yeah, you do need to for Schrader loyalists, you gotta turn out and support him anyways, especially now that since the film came out, he's back to posting on Facebook his just idiosyncratic boomer thoughts. So that will be interesting too. But now we're gonna cover the surprise highlight of the new releases, which I thought was going to be reversed, but James Wan's new horror film Malignant.
I thought you were gonna say a joke.
Oh, Maligma.
There we go. So a little bit of preface before before we start talking about this one. From seeing the trailer, I thought this movie was going to be like ass. I really had the lowest expectation of it. And the movie kind of blew me away and then some. And at the time, I didn't really understand why the poster was kind of harking back to like kind of like the 80s horror movie aesthetic poster. But now I do. But I just wanted to say that really quick before we got into, I guess, our extended conversation on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree that the advertising for this one was very weak. When I was telling you that I was excited to watch it, it was just mostly based on like me wanting a R-rated horror film that wasn't, Conjuring adjacent. And even though that James Wan directed The Conjuring and directed this, but I was still like, I still had hope. I think that poster, I thought that poster is really cool. I love the poster for this, where it's just like her red face with like the font turning into a knife going towards her eye. So I was like, and it's on HBO Max, so what do I have to lose?
But I will admit, I think, Chris, you'd probably stand by me with this one. If you're going to watch this movie, please go to the theater.
Yeah, no, that's my
seriously.
That ended up being my biggest regret, was that I didn't get to see it in the theater.
Imagine if we would have saw that instead of Card Counter. Holy shit. Everyone would have fucking losing their mind.
But I'm just gonna say like, goddamn, it's basically it's a film that starts off as a directly inspired homage to the Italian giallo films of the past, and then just turns into The Raid at the end. And it's so cool. Like, you really don't know what direction the film is going for a while.
No idea. That third act is insane. But I don't want to like spoil too much. And I think you did a very good job of kind of getting the premise across in a way that would seem enticing to people. I would so much prefer if James Wan like continues this kind of direction instead of like The Conjuring and stuff. I don't hate The Conjuring. I just don't find him nearly as interesting as this one. But is there anything else you kind of wanted to add on to it?
Not really, other than like the dialogue is like kind of clunky. But who cares? Who gives a shit,
like with a movie like this, I don't really get the idea that it's trying to take itself that seriously. So I'm really fine to just kind of like be strapped into the ride and just kind of let it do its thing. And so, yeah, no, I have heard that complaint too, that some people thought the acting was bad and the writing was bad and the dialogue
Yeah,
was bad.
but it's
But I
like,
mean, like,
but it's like, it's just, I mean, it's fun schlock. Like,
yeah,
I didn't watch Malignant for like a provocative
the card counter.
I didn't watch it. I didn't
Yeah.
watch it. I didn't go into Malignant with the same thoughts I had going into the card counter,
Yeah.
even though that I ended up enjoying Malignant a lot more than the card counter.
Mhm.
But yeah, so like, yeah, just you'll have a blast with this one. Just some great action set pieces. Very strange use of Pixies. Where is my mind?
Synth instrumental cover.
I didn't tell you, but like last night I had this weird ass dream where it was
Mhm.
like, I think it was spurred because of this movie, because I was thinking about how much cooler it would be if like the soundtrack was just Alice in Chains instead, because it was
Yeah.
set in Seattle. Uh and I had a dream where like I kept like trying to watch movies, and like every single soundtrack in a film was just Alice in Chains songs, and I couldn't
Nice.
escape that. But yeah, I mean, maybe, James Wan should have used some more some Alice in Chains instead. I don't know, some grunge maybe.
Well, they kind of at least acknowledge some of those bands or
Oh
something,
yeah, they do
you
with that.
know,
Yeah.
which is kind of funny. But yeah, I know, I agree. That's 2021 has been a really strange year for having like just the oddest covers of songs and like major motion pictures.
Also, like, I just didn't like, we're here now
Mhm.
what, uh 9 months into the year, and while the awards films haven't come out yet, there's still plenty to drop, like, new Paul Verhoeven
Mhm.
movie, Benedetta,
Wes
that
Anderson.
new Ridley Scott movie, that Duel movie. I'm kind of excited for that. That looks
Doesn't
like
he
it'll
have
be
two
fun.
coming out?
What?
He has House of Gucci in that one.
Yeah, he has two. Yeah.
He's stacking this year up.
But yeah, I didn't expect Malignant to be in my top 5 favorite films of
Yeah,
the year
me
so
neither.
far.
It's really high up there for me,
Yeah.
but I have to really look back through everything.
But yeah, so yeah, please check that one out. I mean, if you can't make it out to the theater, yeah, like, just go on HBO Max, borrow a friend's login, you'll have a blast. And yeah, so I guess, Fulton, you want to talk about your top 3 of the week?
Uh yeah. Um hmm. I watched these are in no kind of particular order, but I watched Prince Avalanche, which is a David Gordon Green movie, and it's an American remake of, I think, like a German movie or Switzerland movie. I forget which it's a remake of.
Mhm.
But this one has Paul Rudd and Amelie Hirsch, and it's kind of like a buddy movie, odds to friendships type thing. Um, and I'm not like too crazy about this movie. I do like that. And I could totally be wrong, but I believe the two leads are the only actual actors on the set. I think they got, which there's not a lot of roles in this movie, anyways.
Mhm.
But it takes place in Texas in the 80s, and it's basically like these two dudes have to um, paint a road, like the yellow lines on a road, and put up all like the road signs on this really long stretch of road that is like cutting through a forest that has recently had a forest fire go through it, and a lot of people lost their homes. It was a really bad
Mhm.
and terrible incident, natural disaster, I should say. Um, so yeah, so like that kind of part of it being set in like a forest fire and people losing their homes, that's definitely a part of the film. And I think that's kind of like my favorite part of the film. Because Paul Rudd kind of comes across this lady out in the middle of the woods, and she's on this big slab of concrete. She's rummaging through all the rubble. And I found that to be like a very like genuine and very good scene in the movie. And it feels very authentic. It doesn't really feel fabricated or anything. But like I said, there's like I think one other role. And that actor also feels very genuine. So I don't know if the juxtaposition is what's throwing me off, but because I don't think that Paul Rudd and Amelia Hirsch are necessarily bad. I think maybe Amelia Hirsch is a little bit miscast. Um, and I also like I feel like the film wants to be taken seriously, but then it just has these really, really goofy moments that did make me.
David Gordon Green couldn't help himself.
He really couldn't, and
because this was the movie that he made after Your Highness, right? It was Your Highness, then it was Prince Avalanche,
which I've unintentionally watched. Not back to back, but I watched Your Highness last week or something. I don't even remember if I may have talked about it on the podcast, but
I think you did briefly.
Yeah.
It's doing that. Well, no, I guess it was The Sitter, Your Highness, Prince Avalanche. So.
That's an interesting trilogy of movies. I think kind of Prince Avalanche is more of like a return to form for him to get away from like all those
raunchy Apatow adjacent type comedies.
Yeah. And so I think this is like a interesting kind of stepping point back into back into the dramas that he used to make. I don't think it completely like lands the mark, but I don't know if I can I would say watch All Real Girls, watch Halloween, George Washington. I think I think you're gonna watch this one if you're a David Gordon Green completionist like myself. So yeah, and then I'll go into Nothing But a Man, which is a really interesting movie in the fact that it deals with like really, really interesting like racial issues about an African American man and woman. And like the central drama of it is about what type of man does the lead want to be, and I'm forgetting his name, but it is Ivan Dixon, who does really, really good. I think all the acting in this movie is really good. Ivan Dixon plays Duff Anderson, and Josie, I believe, is the woman that he falls for, and Josie's father is a priest. And there's kind of a central conflict between Duff and Josie's father, where he's a priest and he kind of it was made in 1964, so it's dealing with like the racial issues of the time. And I just find their kind of juxtaposition very interesting. But the other kind of crazy thing about it is it was made by Michael Romer, which is a white man, and then it was also written by himself and Robert M. Young, which is also another white man. So I was so like perplexed that this movie didn't come from like an African American voice, because you would think with what it's kind of like the subject matter that it's kind of going into,
and then also being not a studio picture too, kind of more of like Poverty Row.
Yeah, it was made for very cheaply, but I think they did a very good job with like what they had on hand. As well.
Well, I mean, like especially in like the big studio films that kind of cover race. I think a lot of them fall short and kind of are a bit dated in a lot of ways. Like, I Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, I think what came out, I want to say like a year or two after this movie, Nothing But a Man. And I think that film is kind of a bit cringe. It was 3 years later. Have you seen Guess Who's Coming to Dinner?
No, I have not. I've seen In the Heat of the Night.
Which I mean, that was a couple years before. Okay. I mean, it's Sidney Poitier. Is a great actor and everything. But yeah, I just think that like how it kind of portrays race in that film is a bit problematic, as far as like, oh, like it's like, oh, Sidney Poitier, he's so perfect and like impervious, instead of like kind of not tackling like the realism of this situation and this like relationship. It's very, I mean, it was also directed by a white man too, but I would be interested to compare and contrast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then lastly, I'll just be brief about this one. John Woo's Hard Target, with Jean-Claude Van Damme. I don't think I have too much to say. I think you can kind of get a kick out of the movie because it is like a fun movie, but I don't think I like completely love it. It doesn't hit my dude's rock action list. Just because I don't know how I feel about the way John Woo directs action. Sometimes I really like it, sometimes I really don't. But my favorite thing about this film is the sheer amount and quantity of Jean-Claude Van Damme kicks enemies in the head, and it's slow motion, and you can really tell that they actually are getting hit in the head. So yeah. But Chris, what are your kind of 3 films that you would like to talk about?
Well, my 3 films that I'd like to talk about, I think just a really important one for this week was my rewatch of Krzysztof Kieslowski's 3 Colors Red, which is, just still one of the best films I've ever seen. Even on, well, I knew that when I first watched it, but on rewatch, it cemented it further a year, which is the first time, which is my first. The last time I watched it was about a year ago. So yeah, I just think I just think that like Kieslowski is just a very like just a filmmaker that just I really resonate with. Like maybe could be the most. I still have to watch quite a few of his films. But 3 Colors Trilogy, Double Life of Veronique, short film about love, short film about killing. I gotta watch the other 8 Decalogue films, but they're all really great, and I think they also kind of represent this kind of beautiful poetic realism that he with the way that he kind of portrays these characters is kind of all a matter of these people meeting from chance, and kind of the beauty that he can see in people coming together and finding each other that maybe necessarily wouldn't. And it's just all about like this. I also watched his the first short that he made when he was a student in film school, and it kind of had those same themes. It's called Tramway, and it's just about this guy that is kind of thinking about like if he wants to talk to this girl on the train, and then like when he finally does muster up enough courage to like go and talk to her, like the train already leaves and it's the moment is past. And I think it's a pretty important piece of his work to look at, because you can kind of see the seeds being planted of like how he looks at his, or how his oeuvre is kind of how it kind of still operated in that way until his last film, which was 3 Colors Red. So yeah, definitely. I mean, we did that Double Life of Veronique episode a year ago or so. So definitely,
yeah, that was an early episode.
Yeah, but what a film. And yeah. So then I want to talk about the film Mexican Spitfire, with starring Lupe Velez from 1940, which was a B picture that RKO made. And it this was for my I had to watch this for my Latinx film class, and we kind of analyzed it kind of in through the lens of like how old Hollywood portrayed Latino characters back in the day. And so like Lupe Velez was a Mexican actress who worked in Hollywood, and she had this series of films that I shit you not were like, yeah, there's 8 of them. There's
gosh,
8 of these movies in this series. This is the second one, the sequel to the first one, The Girl from Mexico, but they were incredibly popular. However, as far as like their portrayal of like Latin American characters, there's they're very it's a very interesting dynamic, because in like one part there's some stuff that is like quite derogatory, or how like Lupe Velez portrays her character Carmelita, that you can see as like kind of playing into these just, you know, horrible stereotypes. But at the same time, she's able to kind of make the movie her film, and also the whole kind of plot relies on her marrying this guy Dennis, and like his aunt and this girl like wanting to break them up because they don't like her being together, and like they're seen as like these closed-minded, bigoted people that are trying to separate their marriage. And they're clearly portrayed as like the negative people. But I just think it's like, it was just like kind of a nice, like, you know, studio comedy. I don't know, it was just a interesting movie. And then I guess I can talk about Unfriended Dark Web.
What everyone was really waiting for you to get to.
Yeah, because I did a rewatch of Unfriended Dark Web, as you do.
I was interested to know. I actually was genuinely interested to know what your take is, because the sequel was a COVID one, right?
No, you're thinking of the
wow.
movie that was like Unfriended but wasn't called Unfriended, that I can't remember. I think it's like called like Host or something.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, Host. Yeah,
Host?
I do want to see that too, though. But anyways, Unfriended Dark Web, on the rewatch, I didn't like it nearly as much as I liked it the first time around, but I think it's still pretty funny. But the only issue with it is even though that it has a lot more going for it compared to the first film, it still takes a while to get going, and it's like, it really does just feel like, you know, oh, I'm just watching some guy screw around on his computer. And you know, I mean, listen, Fulton, I wouldn't be offended if you didn't want to just look at me like browse the internet for like 45 minutes. So that's kind of how I felt.
Yeah.
It does have a really cool like antagonist, though, compared to the first one, which was just some like shitty spirit of like a high schooler that like haunts them. In this one, it's like an epic, cool syndicate of elite hackers that can like hack anything. And that's like in like the last third, that's when like it kind of gets pretty funny. But I still don't think it's like worth checking out. But
What's like the runtime on those?
they're like tight 90.
Okay. I was gonna say I can't imagine it being like any longer than that. Did
Well,
you
yeah, I
ever
mean, also,
see?
and Host is like 50 minutes too. So
Oh wow, okay. I didn't know it was that short. What was that movie with oh man. It was the movie about the dude and he's trying to like solve his daughter's suicide, and it's all on like a Mac. Vanished or Vanishing or Searching. I think it was Searching.
Searching, yeah, you're thinking of
Yeah.
Searching with who's in that? Isn't like
I think I know it, but I also
yeah, it
don't
was
want to say the
John
wrong
Cho's
thing.
in it, yeah.
Yeah, John Cho. I heard good things about that one, but it still like never really like kind of interests me.
It just doesn't. I'm just not super into the idea of just like somebody streaming their screen and then that being the only thing that you see. I haven't seen it done in a creative way. I do vaguely remember a episode of Modern Family being that way that I watched years ago. But
you're like, finally it's being done right.
Thank God. But yeah, I guess that's all I have other than announcing next week's film, which
I just want to say one thing really quick because I looked it up. So following Prince Avalanche would be Joe, which from what I remember, I really, really liked. I want to rewatch it, but it's so
that's the Nick Cage one, right?
yeah, Nick Cage and Ty Sheridan. So I would say it was, I think Prince Avalanche is interesting as a transitional period. I just didn't know that Joe came after that. And they did Manglehorn with Al Pacino.
That was HBO though, right? That was like an HBO thing.
It may be,
Yeah,
but it looks really funny.
Oh yeah, of course, got Al Pacino in it. I mean, there's also that Al Pacino Phil Spector movie that where Al Pacino is Phil Spector.
That sounds awesome.
So
yeah.
So yeah, we next week we are actually covering a Soviet film, 1957's The Cranes Are Flying by Mikhail Kalatozov. I didn't even it wasn't even planned this way to go from a movie about the Cold War to a movie by the Russian drama, but that's what we're doing. So yeah, join us next week. Have a good rest of your week and stay wavy.
Stay safe.
Ой, ну вот я и пришла. Знаете что? Если решите к нам поступать, звоните мне прямо на завод. Хорошо. Ну, до свидания.
Куда вас несет? Куда?